It was a perfect summer day in Connecticut, the kind where the air feels warm and glorious. I remember thinking how fortunate I was as I knelt in my garden, working the soil with my bare hands, feeling connected to the earth. My name is Constance, and at 55 years old, I had found a peaceful rhythm to my life. My daughter was thriving in her junior year of college, my small home was paid off, and I had finally mastered the art of growing the heirloom tomatoes that had frustrated me for years. I never saw the nest. Hidden within the tangle of raspberry canes I was pruning, the black wasps had built their paper fortress, and my intrusion was met with a swift and violent defense. The first sting caught me by surprise, a sudden burning sensation on the back of my hand. Then another, and another. I stumbled backward, already feeling my throat constrict as the feeling of terror began to take hold. I remember thinking, not now, not like this. I had lived with this severe allergy all my life, always careful, always prepared. But my EpiPen was inside the house, and the wasps, disturbed and aggressive, continued to swarm. I ran, swatting frantically at the air around me, each step becoming heavier as my body began to betray me. I made it to the phone, my fingers clumsy and swollen as I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice sounded distant, underwater. I managed to give my address before collapsing to the floor, my airways closing like a fist around my breath. Anaphylactic, I somehow managed to gasp. Wasp stings. Allergic. The minutes that followed blur together in my memory. The sound of sirens, paramedics bursting through my unlocked door, the sharp prick of needles, oxygen masks, and urgent voices. I remember fragments of their conversation as they worked over me in the ambulance. My body started to feel impossibly heavy, yet somehow distant, as though I was receding from it, inch by inch. The hives spread across my skin like wildfire, my limbs swelling beyond recognition. Each attempt at breath was shallow and insufficient. Pain gave way to numbness, then from numbness to a strange detachment. I heard one paramedic say to another, "We don't have a pulse. She is flat-lining. If we give her any more medication, it will kill her." Then there was debate, urgent and professional, over what to do next. Their voices grew fainter, as if they were moving away from me, though I knew it was I who was leaving. And then, I was gone. There was no transition, no tunnel of light as I had always imagined there might be. One moment I was in the ambulance, struggling for my final breaths, and the next I was simply elsewhere. The light was the first thing I noticed, not blinding or harsh, but omnipresent and soft, bathing everything in a radiance that seemed alive, conscious, intentional. It was as if the light itself was a substance, something that could be touched or moved through. I perceived myself to be in what felt like an antechamber or entryway, not fully within whatever lay beyond, but no longer in the world I had known either. The sensation of my body had disappeared. I had no awareness of pain or discomfort, no feeling of the severe reaction that had overwhelmed my physical form moments before. Instead, there was a sense of weightlessness and freedom. I existed as pure awareness, pure consciousness, unfettered by flesh or bone. And I was not alone. There were multiple presences, but I couldn't see them with my eyes. I just felt them with some deeper sense. One presence was greater, more central than the others, radiating an intensity of what I can only describe as pure, distilled love. Though I couldn't see no physical form, no face or figure, I sensed this being as distinctly masculine. The other beings surrounded this central presence like courtiers around a king, or perhaps more accurately, like planets orbiting a sun. They too emanated love and light, each with a distinct individuality that I somehow recognized without seeing. I knew without being told that I was in the presence of what humans have always called God. Not a stern judge or distant creator, but love itself, personified and conscious. The realization didn't frighten me. Instead, It felt like the most natural recognition in the world, like remembering something I had always known but somehow forgotten. The love that surrounded me in that place was unlike anything I had ever experienced on earth. It was absolute, unconditional, and all-encompassing. There was no room for fear or darkness or evil in this place. Such things couldn't exist in the presence of such perfect love. It was as if every moment of love I had ever felt in my earthly life, the birth of my daughter, the embrace of a dear friend, the simple kindness of a stranger, had been mere shadows, pale imitations of this real and perfect love. I felt completely known. Every mistake, every regret, every shame I had ever carried was seen and understood, yet met with compassion rather than judgment. I felt accepted and cherished, not despite my flaws, but somehow including them. It was a homecoming to a place I had never physically been, but recognized at the soul level. Communication in this realm didn't involve words or sound. Instead, thoughts and feelings flowed directly between consciousnesses, immediate and complete. In an instant, I could receive complex ideas and emotions without the clumsy approximation of language. It was through this thought transference that the central being, the one I recognized as God, showed me something unexpected, a close-up image of my daughter's face. It wasn't a static image, but something alive and vibrant, conveying not just her appearance, but her essence, her soul. Along with this vision came understanding. She will need you. No explanation followed, but somehow I knew this wasn't just about my daughter's everyday needs or wants. This was about something vital that lay in her future. I felt the weight of this knowledge settle upon me. Then came the question. It wasn't posed with words, but I understood it perfectly. I could stay in this realm of love and light, or I could return to my life on earth. The choice was mine to make. I was torn. The bliss of this place, the perfection of being enveloped in such love. How could I willingly leave it behind? The thought of returning to the limitations of physical existence, to pain and struggle and the messy complications of human life, seemed almost unbearable after experiencing this transcendent state. Yet I sensed that it would please this being of love if I chose to return. Not that God needed or demanded my return. There was no coercion or manipulation, only perfect respect for my free will. But I loved him so completely in that moment that the mere knowledge that my return would bring him joy made me want to choose it. Before I decided, I was given understanding. Returning would not be easy. There would be challenges ahead, suffering to endure. I was being given a chance to consider, to make a fully informed choice. Time didn't exist in that place as it does on earth. I don't know how long this communion lasted. Moments or millennia could have passed without distinction. Yet in what felt like both an instant and an eternity, I made my decision. I would return. The moment my choice was made, everything changed. There was no gradual transition, no gentle descent. One moment I was immersed in that perfect light and love, and the next, I was back in my body, heavy and confined, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment. The pain returned like a crashing wave, my skin covered in hives like bunches of grapes, my throat raw, my body weak and depleted. Tubes connected me to machines, and an oxygen mask covered my face, delivering medication along with air. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, their expressions shifting from concern to surprise as I opened my eyes.
"She's conscious," someone said, the sound of a human voice jarring after the telepathic communion I had just experienced. I wanted to tell them where I had been, what I had seen, but my throat was too swollen to form words. Instead, I lay there, tears streaming from my eyes. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming sense of loss at being separated from that perfect love, and from the knowledge that I had willingly chosen this return. Recovery was slow. For days, I drifted in and out of consciousness, as my body gradually healed from the trauma of anaphylaxis and resuscitation. When I was finally able to speak, I tried to tell the doctors about my experience, but I quickly realized that medical terminology, hallucinations due to oxygen deprivation, and normal neurological response to trauma, couldn't contain what had happened to me. I stopped trying to explain and focused instead on healing, on returning to my life with the new knowledge I carried. I left the hospital with two things I hadn't arrived with: a prescription for several EpiPens to keep throughout my house and garden, and the understanding that death was not something to fear. Returning to daily life was disorienting. How do you go grocery shopping or pay bills or watch television after you've experienced the edge of eternity? The world felt simultaneously more precious and more transient. Colors seemed more vivid, music more moving, human connections more significant. At the same time, many things that had once seemed important, career ambitions, material possessions, petty disagreements, now felt trivial in comparison to what I had glimpsed. I found myself drawn to accounts of near-death experiences, reading about others who had crossed that threshold and returned. Each story was unique, tailored to the individual, yet common elements emerged: the light, the love, the sense of being welcomed home. Reading these accounts was both comforting and frustrating. Comforting to know others had experienced something similar. Frustrating because even the most eloquent descriptions fell short of capturing the reality. Years passed. I continued my life, feeling changed yet the same. I gardened more carefully, always wearing protective clothing and keeping EpiPens close at hand. I spoke little of my experience, sharing it only with those few friends who I felt might truly listen without judgment. Then, just as had been shown to me in that realm of light, my daughter needed me. After college, she had married a kind man, and they were expecting their first child. What should have been a joyous time turned frightening when complications developed early in her pregnancy. She was diagnosed with a rare condition that threatened both her life and the baby's, placed on complete bed rest, with frequent hemorrhaging and a prognosis that left doctors shaking their heads in concern. For months, I lived with my daughter and son-in-law, caring for her through the dangerous pregnancy. Each time she hemorrhaged, each emergency trip to the hospital, I was reminded of what I had been shown and why I had returned. I never told her about my experience. She was frightened enough without hearing how I had foreseen her needing me. But I carried the knowledge like a lantern in the darkness, illuminating our path forward. Against medical expectations, my daughter survived the pregnancy, and my granddaughter was born 1 month early, tiny but perfect, with bright eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her newborn state. The doctors called it miraculous. They said the chances had been about 1 in a million. I simply smiled, remembering what I had been shown in that place of light. As my granddaughter grew, healthy, vibrant, identified as gifted by her teachers, I watched her with a special wonder. Was there something particular about this child? Something that made her existence so important that I had been sent back to ensure it happened? Or was it simply the mystery of potential that exists in every new life? The infinite possibilities that unfold with each generation? I don't have those answers. What I do know is that my experience changed me. I live now with a constant awareness of that other realm, like a melody playing just beyond the range of hearing. I miss it. Some days the longing to return to that perfect love is so intense, it manifests as physical pain, an ache centered deep in my chest. Yet I try to live worthily of the choice I made. I strive to grow spiritually, to embody some small fraction of the love I experienced there. I fail often. Impatience, judgment, and selfishness still find their way into my thoughts and actions. I remain frustratingly human. But I keep trying, knowing that God understands my struggles and loves me through them.